Schlock culture is brought to you by Anchor FM. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so you can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast, all in one convenient place. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hello and welcome to Schlock Culture. I'm your host Joshua Halstead. This week we're talking about Matrix, Demi Lovato and Will Ferrell in a movie together, Marvel and Sony severed ties for Spider-Man, and a whole lot more. So let's just jump into it with our first segment called Scattershot. Now, Scattershot is a segment where I cover a bunch of news in a short amount of time. These are generally articles that I don't have a whole lot of thoughts on, so I want to jump through them, give you my general overview thoughts, and move on so we can get to our big stories of the week. So to start out, let's talk about Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss are set to reprise their roles of Neo and Trinity in a fourth Matrix film, which is being made by Lana Wachowski. There's really not any more information, so there's not a whole lot to go on, but I will say that this actually does have me curious. I really only like the first Matrix film, so I'm not super excited, but this definitely has me intrigued. I think a big portion of that is that they only announced Lana Wachowski returning to make the film, which is exciting to me just because I think that's something new and interesting. I don't believe that Lana's ever made a film on her own, and I think that would be something a little bit different to bring to the franchise. Although it's possible, absolutely, that they would go ahead and just bring in the other sister as well, but currently they've only announced Lana. Now, the biggest thing for me, spoiler alert, I guess, for a 16-year-old film, is that Neo dies at the end of The Matrix, taking all the Smiths with him, which seems like a pretty conclusive ending, but I guess they never really completed like the Jesus storyline, because they definitely spent a lot of time in the first three films making Neo Jesus, but then didn't really resurrect him, so he just kind of dies. So maybe it's continuing on that storyline and he's going to be resurrected to kind of complete the Jesus metaphor, which to me personally just sounds a bit disappointing because I feel like it'd be predictable just because it's been done a lot, it's been seen a lot, especially recently. I do kind of like the idea of Neo becoming part of the Matrix so that like when new people enter, an evil computerized Neo hunts them down. I think that'd be the most interesting option for them, but I don't know if that would capitalize on the Keanu-sance that's going on right now, enough for it to really sell tickets. Which leads to my other concern, which is that they're going to oversaturate the market with Keanu until nobody wants to see films with him anymore. Which, I mean, they've already kind of done that with, like, Chris Pratt and with Jennifer Lawrence, and it can definitely happen to Keanu Reeves as well, especially since almost everything he's been in is a franchise recently. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the dude, and I'm excited for Bill and Ted 3, and I'm interested in the new Matrix and John Wick 4, but I think he's in danger of kind of overplaying his hand, especially with choosing to return to franchises that have been dead for a while. Shot number 2, Demi Lovato has joined the cast of Will Ferrell's new Netflix comedy Eurovision, which is about the real-life singing competition that launched the careers of people like Celine Dion. In the film, Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams will play Icelandic musicians Lars Eriksson and Sigrid Eiríksdóttir, I believe is how you say that. I apologize to any Icelandic listeners because I probably just butchered that name. And they'll be joined by Pierce Brosnan, who will play Will Ferrell's dad, which is weird because he's only like 10 or 11 years older than Will Ferrell. And then Dan Stevens, and now Demi Lovato, who will play Kariana, one of the most beautiful and angelic singers in Iceland. This sort of feels like a Hail Mary for Will Ferrell's career, since he lost his long-standing partnership with Adam McKay, and all of his recent films have basically been failures either critically or commercially. I'm not really sure how I feel about the film overall, but I think it'll be interesting to see how it's received by audiences, since it could either revitalize Ferrell's career, or could kill everyone else involved's career. The Icelandic accents that they're going to be faking through the entire film are my main source of concern here. I feel like it would get very tiring very quickly, especially because Will Ferrell tends to be over the top, and an over-the-top Icelandic accent done by an American actor for an hour and a half might become grating pretty quick. And to be honest, Icelandic listeners might find it offensive, so I'm not really sure how this is going to play. Now, some portion of this sort of feels like an attempt to cash in on the popularity of recent musical comedies like Pitch Perfect, but it definitely could do a lot to set itself apart, and the casting of Lovato kind of serves to help with that, but I have to wonder about her career after this, because this means that it's yet another musical comedy under her belt. If she's not already, this will definitely put her in typecast territory. Shot number 3. Yesterday it was announced via tweet that the new James Bond film is called No Time to Die, and Daniel Craig will be James Bond 007. Not too long ago it was announced that there would be a black female 007 played by Lashana Lynch from Captain Marvel. So what does this report mean for that storyline? The tweet does refer to Craig as 007, so who knows? I'd lean toward he's probably 007 till the end of the film and then passes the mantle to Lynch's character. I mean, I can't see a reason why they'd announce the other and then take it back at this point. They'd also announced that the film after No Time to Die would be made by Fleabag creator Phoebe Waller-Bridge. To be completely honest and upfront, James Bond is not a franchise I particularly enjoy. I do like a few installments, but overall I kind of find it boring and stale. So I have no problem with the announcements they've made, but I do have concern over how they'll handle it. They would have to establish, as has been hinted previously but not confirmed, that the number 007 is a legacy title. They'd also need to make the film focused on being a good spy film and not diving too deep into political sphere. Doing that, I think they'll mostly avoid most of the controversy, but there'll always be a little bit. As far as the name of the film goes, I actually think it's super cool. It sounds very classic Bond, and the logo definitely looks it. Though Die Another Day is another cool title, but a terrible film, so title's not necessarily everything. Honestly, I don't think the filmmaking delays and injuries behind the scenes that have been announced so far will carry a whole lot of weight about if the film will be good or not, since that sort of seems par for the course nowadays. But the director is the biggest question mark here. Cary Fukunaga is a fantastic director, but he's also only really done character dramas to this point. Though similar jumps have been successfully made recently, I'm actually sort of excited to see where the new Bond film could go, which could be a good sign for the studio if it's energizing people who are not necessarily the target audience is its goal, because I'm definitely interested now. I want to see them. Next shot, Dan Trachtenberg, the director of 10 Cloverfield Lane, has officially announced that he left as director of Uncharted the movie. This would make him the second director to leave the film after Sean Levy originally left. Now, at this point, Tom Holland is still attached to play Nathan Drake, but this has a lot of fans unsure how to feel about this movie. Now, for me, I was never all that excited. I don't have a whole lot of interest in a young Nathan Drake. I love the Uncharted games, and I was stoked for the idea of an Uncharted live-action movie because I thought, oh, he is designed after Nathan Fillion. Nathan Fillion got back in shape and could play this role. And then they announced they were going young Nathan Drake and Tom Holland, who I love Tom Holland, but this, to me, is no longer interesting. Dan Trachtenberg was interesting to me because I like him a lot. I loved 10 Cloverfield Lane, but I've now kind of lost interest again. There's a lot of turmoil behind the scenes, and I think they're going to have a hard time finding a capable director to come in and do this, being that two directors have now left citing creative differences, and that's really, really damaging, especially when one of those directors is Dan Trachtenberg, who is very good, but is also by no means a big-name director. The next shot, Bob Odenkirk officially announced that they have finished filming the Breaking Bad movie. If you're not following this, this is a movie about Jesse Pinkman. Aaron Paul is back, and Bryan Cranston's back, and Bob Odenkirk is back, and Vince Gilligan is making it. And it's going to be released day and date, Netflix and AMC, and I think it's awesome. I'm excited. I love Breaking Bad, and I think this is a cool idea, and I'm glad to see that it's done and that we're definitely for sure getting this and that we should be getting it relatively soon. In quickie funny news, Zach Galifianakis' YouTube series Between the Ferns is getting a full-length movie thanks to Netflix. I think it's a funny series. I think it's cool. I'm excited to see what they do. I think it's a little strange, but I will take it. And now it's time to talk about horror news. First up, Ari Aster just screened his 171-minute director's cut of Midsommar at Film and Lincoln City's Scary Movies 12. At the screening, Aster called the film unreleasable and explained that this version he made prior to the studio asking him to make some changes in order to make it more accessible. Now, if you've seen Midsommar, you know that it's still not all that accessible for mainstream audiences, but the director's cut begs the question, what did he have to cut out to make it releasable? There's some breakdowns of what has been changed, and without spoilers, it looks to mostly be some important character development and a change to the relationship between the film's leads. Personally, I thought Midsommar was genius. I'm a big fan of weird, controversial, hard-to-watch films, like some of Lynch's work, Aster's films, and even that of Darren Aronofsky can sometimes veer into that world. I'm here for a super long cut of Midsommar. Should A24 decide, of course, to release that cut for general audiences, be it on Blu-ray or in theaters. Moving on, it was announced that Netflix is making a sequel to the 2017 horror comedy The Babysitter, with McGee set once again to direct. The film has found a different screenwriter this time, however, in the form of Dan Lagana, who was the showrunner for Zack Stone Is Gonna Be Famous over on MTV, Deadbeat on Hulu, and perhaps most notably, Netflix's American Vandal. I personally really liked the Babysitter movie. I thought it knew exactly what it was, and it stayed in that lane and was successful because of it. I thought a lot of the humor worked really well, and when it missed, it didn't drag the film down too much. With Lagana set to write the film, I think it shows that Netflix has a lot of faith in this, and is taking seriously rather than making a cash grab sequel. That being said, there isn't really a need for a sequel to this film, and I'm not sure where they could take it from here. I'm interested in where it'll go from here, especially with Lagana penning it, and now that Samara Weaving is a proven star with a new film Ready or Not in theaters this weekend. The 1999 book by Stephen King, The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, is finally getting a big screen adaptation. Now, this was originally supposed to be adapted by George A. Romero, rest in peace, who unfortunately passed away before he could make it. Now that it is greenlit and confirmed to be happening, I can only hope that somewhere in the credits they give a shout out to one of the greatest horror directors of all time. Additionally, Mike Flanagan confirmed that Dr. Sleep, his sequel to The Shining, will in fact be rated R. I don't think this is very shocking, especially if you know Mike Flanagan, but I do think it's a good sign, because there's always a concern the studios are going to ask the directors to tone it down and keep it to a PG-13 to be more marketable. With Ewan McGregor set to play Danny Torrance, I can only assume that this is going to be awesome, just like every other Mike Flanagan movie. Additionally, Jon Favreau and the Chiodo brothers have announced that they are doing a claymated Christmas special for Netflix based on the Chiodo brothers' picture book Alien Christmas. Lee Whannell's The Invisible Man movie, being produced by Blumhouse, has actually been moved up 2 months to February 2020. I cannot wait. Lee Whannell has really been surprising me lately. Robert Englund recently said, for the second time in recent memory, that he thinks he has one more movie of Freddy Krueger left in him before retiring the character for good. He also suggested that Kevin Bacon play Freddy Krueger when he's gone, saying he doesn't want a remake of the original, but to continue the legacy of the franchise, Kevin Bacon, a lover of horror and a real actor, would be a great pick. And I kind of agree. I think Kevin Bacon would be fantastic, though it would be crossing franchises just a little bit. The Jordan Peele-produced Candyman remake has begun shooting this week. And lastly, the director of Better Watch Out, the fantastic Christmas horror movie from a couple of years ago, has a new film coming out where a mom gets possessed by an evil spirit. It's called Limbo, and if you've seen Better Watch Out, you know exactly why I am this excited for that film. And now it's time for a segment I like to call, What Did Disney Do This Week? So starting with that, in Disney news, the partnership between Marvel and Sony has been officially severed. Kevin Feige will no longer produce the Spider-Man films, nor will he have any creative input. This could mean that from now on, neither franchise will reference the other. Now, when the news broke, it was sort of seen as Sony's fault, and understandably so. But a couple of days removed, here's what we know. Some insiders revealed to Deadline that Marvel and Sony had ended their Spider-Man deal. Sony tried to play this down, but eventually confirmed it. This led to a massive outcry from the fandom, including #BoycottSony trending on Twitter. Then, Sony made a statement on Twitter confirming the split-up, but claiming that Marvel and Feige were the ones who chose to leave. According to current reports, this is because Marvel demanded a 50-50 split in profit from the Spider-Man films. That's basically all the actual news we have, but I have some thoughts on this because I don't think it's as clear-cut as they're making it out to be. Removing Spider-Man from the MCU would create several continuity errors within the storyline, so while Marvel could and more than likely would survive the split, it certainly isn't optimal for them. That being said, at SDCC, they didn't announce any Spider-Man properties, and they announced the proper introduction of the multiverse, so Marvel at least has a built-in escape route. Sony, on the other hand, does not necessarily. Without the MCU and support of Kevin Feige, fans are far less likely to trust a new Spider-Man flick will be good. It would also create major continuity issues since they let Marvel imprint their universe so heavily into the fabric of John Watts' films. Sony has a lot more at risk here than Marvel does, and don't think Marvel isn't very, very aware of that. Sony got the backlash. If any of the films flop, it will be Sony's, and Sony has no way out that's just built in. For that reason, I don't actually think the insiders can be trusted. I believe that this is a calculated power move by the folks over at Disney to pressure Sony into giving them more of the profit. More than likely, they will mend fences and sign a new deal. But there actually may be a world where Sony doesn't take Marvel back. Let's explore this. Since Tom Holland's Spider-Man was involved with the MCU, he had to be left out of the Into the Spider-Verse film. He actually had a scene written into it that had to be removed. With Lord and Miller set to return to make more Spider-Man films after the success of their first one, and that film being the introduction of a multiverse, this could absolutely be a quick out for the whole no Avengers situation. Additionally, they could just kill Tom Holland's Spider-Man, bring Miles Morales into live action from the Into the Spider-Verse films. With the massive success of Spider-Verse and Venom, they could very easily remove continuity untied from Marvel and then fully own a successful franchise, without having to share any profits with Marvel. This could be more lucrative for Sony. That is, of course, still a close call and a bit of a risk. So, like I said, they'll most likely bury the hatchet and sign a new deal, but there is a possibility that Sony wouldn't want to or need to mend the fences with Marvel. Alright, and the biggest story of the week is all about Disney and Fox's merger, which isn't necessarily brand new news, but with the news announced this week and last week, it felt like it was important to cover. Since it was announced nearly 2 years ago that Walt Disney Studios was buying Fox, I've been conflicted both as a consumer and as an aspiring filmmaker. The concern for many film fans, myself included, was that Disney would use this buyout to essentially eliminate competition. While the headlines mostly talked about how we'd finally be able to see the X-Men and Fantastic Four with the Avengers, there was a more sinister underlying story, that of a mega conglomerate who was being allowed to purchase another major company and do with it as it pleased. This meant that they could basically just close 20th Century Fox while transferring the most lucrative properties to Disney proper. My fears have at this point mostly been validated. Upon fully taking over Fox, Disney closed down their mid-tier filmmaking company Fox 2000, canceled over 250 mainline Fox films, and turned the major IPs almost entirely over to Disney, most notably giving the superheroes to Kevin Feige. This has all been pretty public. Disney made no effort to hide their displeasure with Fox Studios executives and their recent string of failures. To be fair to Disney, since the acquisition of Fox, only one film has managed to be a success. This, however, is where I think the problem lies. I believe Disney has learned the wrong lesson from Fox's recent slate of failures. All the studio's big blockbuster films, like Dark Phoenix, were bombs, but their mid-level faith-based drama Breakthrough was the only film to, pun intended, break through. While it can be at least partially credited to the ever-lucrative faith-based moniker, I suspect the audiences also went to see it as a reprieve from the barrage of mega-budget superhero and action films. To further illustrate this point, I'll address how the landscape of cinema has changed in the last decade. It used to be that films of every kind were released throughout the entire year, and generally films of any genre could make money. Then, in 1975, Steven Spielberg released Jaws, and it ushered in the era of the blockbuster summer. For years and years, studios would release big, action-packed films between June and August to capitalize on the audience's expectations of popcorn flicks to take their family to during the break from school. Capitalizing off that were studios with major horror films on their slate who decided that if summer was for action films, then October could be for horror films. After that, studios began strategically releasing in specific months. February was for rom-coms, March was for sports movies, and January was for films you had very little confidence in. That model persisted until about 10 years ago, when the superhero craze fully took off. Every studio wanted to release a superhero film, and they wanted it to have legs, in order to make sure that their film had breathing room for the next major film released, allowing themselves to take the number one box office slot for more than 1 week in a row. They had to start releasing earlier and earlier. Soon, blockbuster summer was from April until early September. And then studios figured out you could release some upper mid-tier action films in February, like Deadpool, and in December you could release big spectacle family-friendly films like The Greatest Showman, Les Miserables, and Star Wars. With the latest boom in horror, this means that, short of January, every month of the year is now full of spectacle films. Just Disney alone is releasing so many of these that they've accidentally cut the legs out from their own movies in order to release another. A month ago, Disney had 4 films in the top 5 box office hits for several weeks in a row. At this point, Disney has successfully eliminated their competition or forced them to change into blockbuster cranking machines. This is where the first issue lies. Every film craze in history has eventually gotten stale and gone out of style. What happens when audiences get tired of superhero films, where they got tired of teen comedies in the early thousands, horror in the late 90s, and French New Wave in the 80s? Disney doesn't have a built-in failsafe. They are banking on culture always being as nerd positive as they are now, and always wanting an onslaught of massive blockbusters. That is an extremely risky move. Now other studios, such as Sony and Warner Brothers, could rise up to meet the demand of smaller films, but aside from the fact that they don't have the instant association of quality that the Disney name does, they also would have a hard time pitting those films against current Disney films. Disney has created another major problem for themselves, though. Without mid-tier films, there's no safe way to test if a filmmaker can be trusted with several $100 million budget films. That becomes very troubling, because at a certain point, they'll be unable to guarantee the same level of quality, thus tarnishing their name. Within the last decade, Disney has changed the landscape of cinema so much that if they've bet on the wrong genre, it could be the final nail in the coffin of theatrical releases altogether. All of that said, I do actually see a path for Disney to make this beneficial for themselves, audiences, filmmakers, and their competition. 20th Century Fox should become entirely focused on mid-level films like Love, Simon, and The Hate U Give, and on the more adult R-rated comedies and dramas like Seth Rogen films. They should all be kept to reasonably low budgets and should be released within the first few months of the year, or else in November when there's little to no big budget competition. They should also try to avoid releasing any major Disney films during those months. Additionally, they should put a heavy focus on Fox Searchlight, the subsidiary of Fox that focuses on buying independent films from festivals and giving them wide releases. It is my belief that they should be investing in this heavily, since it is a pretty cheap route and this would bring them a lot of prestige. In the last several years, Fox Searchlight has been a major awards contender repeatedly, even snagging a Best Picture win at the Oscar for Shape of Water. Disney can create a Fox Searchlight streaming service as a couple $1 a month add-on to the Disney Plus app. They can release all of the Fox Searchlight films day and date on the Disney Plus app and in theaters. This would be an easy way to make money at low risk. Additionally, since these films would likely be awards contenders, it would drive viewership of the Oscars. It would create friendly-ish competition between the studios regarding those lower budget films, and they would drive sales on bigger budget films. And finally, it would give them a chance to test filmmakers out on mid-tier films before giving them the keys to major franchises like Marvel and Star Wars. Alright guys, so I was all set to upload this podcast for the week and get it out there to you guys, but then D23 happened and I forgot that was happening this weekend. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cover all the information from Friday up till when I am done recording this at about 6:10 or so, and then upload that, and then the rest of the D23 information I'll talk about on next week's podcast. So let's just jump into it. One of the things I'm really excited for is at D23, they announced that Hilary Duff will be returning as Liz McGuire in a new Disney Plus series. In this, she'll be playing a 30-year-old millennial struggling to make it in the big city, and her 13-year-old animated self will also be there, and she'll still be dealing with that and the insecurities that causes. I'm really excited for this. I am a huge fan of Liz McGuire. I grew up with it, and Hilary Duff was like my first celebrity crush, so I'm 100% down for the show. I'm really excited for it, and I'll definitely be binging it the second that it drops. Additionally, they dropped not only posters for, but trailers for a few new Disney Plus things, all of which are things I'm really excited for. They dropped the first poster and the first official trailer for their new live-action Lady and the Tramp remake. I'm really excited. I was not sure how to feel about it going in. I really like the cast, and I like that they're doing it with real dogs. But, you know, there's always a concern whenever Disney attacks something like this. Are they going to stay true to the original? Are they going to do something cool and original with it? Is it going to feel like it's being done in love? Is it going to have that Disney magic? I gotta tell you, I watched the trailers for Lion King, and I was excited for Lion King, and I wasn't a big fan. I've had that experience a few live action movies, but I will be honest. At no point watching the trailer for Lion King or for Aladdin or any of those did I feel like this is Disney magic. Watching the trailer for Lady and the Tramp is the first time since probably Jungle Book that I have watched a trailer for a Disney live-action remake and felt like it had Disney magic, classic Disney magic. It looks beautiful, it looks sweet, it looks like it tugs on the heartstrings, and I think most importantly here, it does not look like a straight to TV or straight to digital movie. It looks theatrical quality. And that was a big question mark for the Disney Plus streaming service up to this point. Was they were announcing Disney Plus shows and Disney Plus original movies, and a lot of the questioning was, is this going to look like Disney Channel or not? And the answer is no. Gratefully, it looks like theatrical level stuff. And I think the trailer for Lady and the Tramp looks awesome. The voice casting is really good, and I'm very excited. But along the lines of looking like theatrical quality, let's talk about that amazing Mandalorian trailer, because the trailer for Jon Favreau's The Mandalorian dropped with Pedro Pascal as a bounty hunter. It's a Star Wars series, and I have been sold. All the pictures had me sold. The casting of Pedro Pascal and the casting of Carl Weathers had me sold. But holy crap, that trailer looks amazing. I mean, it looks more theatrical, more presentable, and more beautiful than Rogue One, than Solo, than, most of the movies coming out today, and even some of, like I said, some of the new Star Wars movies. It looks absolutely awesome and incredible. I'm really, really excited for this series. This is the first time I've been really excited for a Star Wars TV show ever, and I cannot wait to binge watch the whole thing. And then the last thing along those lines is that they did drop the first poster and the first trailer for their Christmas comedy with Anna Kendrick called Noel. So it's Anna Kendrick and Bill Hader, and Bill Hader plays the brand new Santa Claus. He doesn't want to be Santa Claus. It's got Billy Eichner, Billy on the Street, that guy, and a bunch of awesome, really cool stars. It looks like Shirley MacLaine is in it, and basically they have to go on a rescue mission to bring Bill Hader back and convince him he should be Santa Claus. And we have definitely seen this before. We've seen this plot line before, and some of the jokes in this trailer definitely are jokes that you would have seen in a late 90s, early 2000s Christmas movie. And to be perfectly honest with you, that's what I wanted. This trailer made me so happy. To be completely clear here, Anna Kendrick is one of my favorite actresses. She's a Broadway sensation. I love musical theater. I love almost everything with Anna Kendrick in it. I am a huge Bill Hader fan as a person and professionally. He made Barry on HBO, which is one of my favorite shows ever. I really, really like both of those people. Shirley MacLaine is in my all-time favorite comedy, The Apartment from 1960. I've been a big fan of hers for a long time, and I'm a big fan of Billy Eichner. So this is a Christmas movie. Christmas is my favorite holiday. It's a Christmas movie being made with that little bit of Disney magic on it, and it has Santa Claus and elves and Christmas World, and it's got 4 of my favorite stars in the entire world in it. So obviously I'm excited for it. There was not going to be a world where I'm not excited for this, but this blew away my expectations. It made my heart so happy. It made me want to just put on my Harry Potter pajamas and curl up with peppermint hot cocoa, and that is everything I want in a trailer for a Christmas movie. I could not be happier that this happened. Really, really excited for that. Additionally, they did announce that Kat Dennings, Randall Park, and Kathryn Hahn are all joining the WandaVision show. Kat Dennings, of course, has been in these before, but I am very excited. I love Kathryn Hahn and I love Randall Park. Randall Park is amazing in Always Be My Maybe on Netflix, which I did not think was going to be as good as it was. Holy cow. And Kathryn Hahn is just an absolutely underappreciated talent. She's amazing in the Bad Moms movies. She was great in this little indie film that Sean Levy made a few years ago called This Is Where I Leave You. She's in a lot of really, really good movies. She's in one with Josh Radnor called Afternoon Delight, and I've been a big fan of hers for a long time, so I'm really excited to see her get sort of a somewhat major role in a major series. I think this is awesome, and I'm really, really excited. The last thing here related to Disney Plus is that they officially announced a She-Hulk live-action show, a Moon Knight live-action show, and a Miss Marvel live-action show, all of which will tie into the MCU. This is awesome to me. So I love Moon Knight. 100% he's a Batman ripoff, but he's an amazing Batman ripoff. I love Moon Knight. She-Hulk is amazing, especially the newest run of She-Hulk comics, which this looks, based on just the logo alone, like it is borrowing heavily from that. And then the new Miss Marvel also appears to be borrowing heavily from the latest run of Miss Marvel comics, which are not only just amazing comics, but also allows for a natural integration of diversity within their cast. And I am very excited for all of those shows. And I, honestly, as weird as it might be, I am more excited for these shows than I think for anything that is specifically attached to MCU live action movies coming out. They did announce Kit Harington is going to be joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They didn't say as what. The internet seems pretty sure it's Wolverine. I'm fine with that. I really love Game of Thrones. I don't think Kit Harington is the strongest actor. So there's a concern for me that he would be a bit too soap opera-y, because even some of his acting in Game of Thrones was not quite movie quality. So I would be a bit concerned giving him such a big role, but I do like Kit Harington, and I would be fine with him as Wolverine. I also wonder if maybe he's Johnny Storm or the Thing in a Fantastic Four movie. And to bounce off of that, the last nail in the coffin Disney thing to cover is that they did announce, technically it's Sony, but it's close enough. They did announce that Tom Holland is set to return for a Spider-Man Far From Home sequel from the writers of Spider-Man Far From Home, but it is not part of the MCU. It is its own thing. But it is a sequel, which is kind of what I expected up to this point. I do think eventually Disney and Sony will mend the fences, but I don't know how it'll happen. And then just to throw it out there, because I'm excited about it, Kevin Smith announced at PowerCon that he is, for Netflix, doing a brand new sequel series to Masters of the Universe. He brought out the writing staff, which is a really good writing staff, but most notably for me and for a lot of people is Mark Bernardin, who has been trying to get into the writing business, who just wrote a series for Amazon Prime, and who hosts Fat Man Beyond with Kevin Smith. Is one of the writers on the show, and they are sending over to the animation studio that did the animation for Netflix's fantastic Castlevania series. And regardless of how you feel about the Castlevania series on its own, the animation itself is absolutely gorgeous, and this just sounds really fun to me. It sounds awesome. I really, really, really like Kevin Smith. I like him in this role. And Kevin Smith has shown that he can really do dramatic stuff and bigger, more sweeping stuff. People kind of seem to forget that he made Red State, and that is completely serious and dramatic and super good. He made Chasing Amy, which is, a comedy, but also very dramatic. And it's very good. And he writes that well, that character drama well. And if you listen to Smith and to Bernardin and to the other writers of the show talk about it, they keep saying He-Man was first and foremost a character drama show, and that's what they want to focus on, and I am 100% down for that. So yeah, that is everything. Thank you for listening. Please tune in next week. Have a great week.